It's 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Mr. Borgnano.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is whether we have any additions or deletions. Mr. Bowling, any additions from your end? Any of the commissioners? If not, we'll proceed with the agenda. Item 3 is approval of the minutes of August 13, 2015.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. Emmons made a motion.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Rednow, was that? Yeah, Mr. Rednow. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item 4A, the car store. Donald Doyle's request for administrative permit use approval for a used vehicles sales business to be known as the car store. Donald Doyle is the owner. MBV Engineering, Inc. is the agent. Project is located at 11191 U.S. Highway 1 in Sebastian. The zoning is CH, heavy commercial. Land use designation is CI, commercial industrial. This is a quasi-judicial matter, so we'll start by polling the commissioners. Have any of you had any ex parte communications, any investigations, other consultations, or conflicts, or any other reason why you cannot approach this matter impartially and base your decision on the evidence in the law? Hearing none, we'll proceed then. We'd ask anybody who's about to testify on the matter to please stand. And Madam Clerk, would you please swear the witnesses?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and we'll start with the county's presentation.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Palakowicz. John McCoy with the county planning staff, for the record. This is an administrative permit use for a used auto sales facility for the car store. Administrative permit uses are conditional uses, and they need to meet additional specific land use criteria, and those are mostly, in this case, dimensional and some materials as far as the additional criteria that they need to meet, and then they also need to be considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's why the application is here before you all tonight. Those criteria are listed in item 16 of your staff report. The subject site is located on the west side of US 1 in the northern portion of the county, just south of the intersection where Indian River Drive meets US 1 on the east side, and it's on the west side. And the applicant actually owns a larger parcel, and this is an area of development within the southern portion of the parcel that they own. The slide shows the zoning of the subject site, which is heavy commercial. The property to the south is limited commercial, and the property to the north is heavy commercial. Across US 1 to the east is RS6, and then to the west you have the FEC railroad tracks, and then Old Dixie, and then some residentially zoned property west of that. This is an aerial of the subject site, and again, the area of development in the southern portion of that blue outlined area. So you can see there are a number of trees on there. Some of those trees will be impacted by the development of this site, and the applicant will need to provide a tree mitigation plan that goes through the mitigation for the removal of the specimen trees. You can also see that the subject site is undeveloped, as are the properties to the north and the south, and then there are some structures on the west side of the railroad tracks in Old Dixie, and then some residential structures that are much further east, and those are actually, most of those are located adjacent to the Indian River as you go east of US 1. This is a slide that shows the layout of the overall site plan. You've got the retention in the rear, you've got the parking lot and customer parking. It will have some vehicle prep areas along the front and an office area, and then the rest of its vehicular display area to the south of the office building. A couple items I'd like to point out as far as traffic circulation. We'll have one two-way driveway to US 1. This particular design provides stub outs to the north and the south, so the parking lot can be extended to the north and the south when the properties to the north and south develop, the applicant is required to build a sidewalk, a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk along the project's US 1 frontage, and that'll need to be constructed prior to the issuance of a certificate of completion for this facility. Landscape, and this illustrates the landscape plan. The larger symbols that you see on the plan are representing either trees that are preserved in place or trees that are relocated, which is why they have the larger designation. And then many of the planted or to-be planted materials are illustrated with a standard size symbols. And this also takes into account again, the tree preservation and relocation on the site. With that, I would like to get to the recommendation, and staff does recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission grant administrative permit use approval for the car store with the conditions in staff report, which include the tree mitigation, the landscape installation, and the sidewalk along US 1 prior to the issuance of a certificate of completion. Thank you.
Okay, do any of the commissioners have any questions of county staff?
There are 16 parking spots that are designated for customers.
That is correct.
And those are all marked by permanent signage?
They are all supposed to be marked, and that will be checked at the time of certificate of completion or certificate of occupancy, that they are designated with signs.
And what's the verbiage of those signs? Do you know?
Typically, it's customer parking.
Okay, yeah, because I'm trying to think of car dealerships that I've been in, and I don't think I've ever seen a sign, you just park anywhere.
That especially can be problematic if your car accidentally gets sold while you're there.
That's
for a few deals.
Maybe not. And then the display spots are 300 square feet per spot.
The 300 square feet actually takes into account a little bit of maneuvering room, because a typical parking space is really 10 by 18, so
Right.
180, so it takes into account maneuvering area.
Yeah, so this would be 10 by 30 to get 300.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, yep.
Any other questions by commissioners? I do have a question, probably for my own education as much as anything, but do we require turn-in lanes coming off US 1 for a project like this?
That is based on the traffic impact statement and the trip thresholds, and it's all based on trip generation and volume or movements per hour. So once they trip a certain volume of trips per hour, traffic engineering will require them to install either a right turn lane or a left turn lane, depending upon which volume and thresholds are tripped, which movement.
And DOT also has their own thresholds for turn lane requirements.
Okay, and on this project, I assume we're not tripping any of those thresholds, is that correct?
That's correct, because auto dealerships typically have a low trip rate.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't see anything on sign. Officer, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask about the applicant, but well, that's okay. If you had a comment from what...
Yeah, I didn't see anything about signage on there. Is there anything about the
Excuse me?
signage?
Signage. There will be signage, and typically at this point, there's a general indication of where the sign is going to be. The sign is permitted through a separate sign permit process, where the copy will be evaluated, the size, the location, and then they'll get a separate building permit for the structure, any electrical, the foundation, those items.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Does the applicant have any questions for county staff first? Okay, would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Thank you. No presentation. Ryan McLean, MBV Engineering. We'd just like to concur with staff's recommendation for approval, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions by commissioners of the applicant? If not, thank you. I don't know if there are any members of the public. Any member of the public wish to be heard on this? If not, we'll go ahead and close the hearing part of the quasi-judicial hearing. And at this point, commissioners, what's your preference?
Motion to approve with staff recommendations.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Brognano with the staff recommendations. Do we have a second to
I'll
that?
second.
A second by Mr. Stewart. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Okay, the only other item on our agenda, well, actually, let me get back over here. Commissioner matters, we don't have any listed. Do any of the commissioners have any matters they'd like to raise? We have the planning information package. Any questions or comments with respect to the package? Attorneys matters, Mr. DeBrawl, anything?
No, sir.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes.
Just, if I could update the commission just on two things. One is, you had a much longer meeting last time that you all may recall.
Coming up on 11 minutes, I'm getting impatient here.
Yeah, sorry, I tried to draw it out. No, on vacation rentals, two items that staff is adding to the proposal that you all saw, and it really kind of comes out of the discussion that was before you all. One deals with persons, say, who already have a contract for an event, say a wedding event, that will be held within a year of when the board looks at that. The board will have an option to include something like that in the ordinance that they adopt, and Attorney DeBrawl has crafted that up. Another is an exception for large agricultural properties to allow special events to be accepted from the prohibition if they go through our temporary use permit process, which we already have regulations for and use quite often for put up and set up and take down type of events. And we deal with traffic and sanitation and parking and hours of operation, nuisance things. So those two are being added to the ordinance, and the Board of County Commissioners is scheduled to look at that September 22nd. And we will make sure that we copy you all on the report that goes out as well, so you can see that information for yourselves. And then the other thing, just in terms of future Planning and Zoning Commission meetings, it does not look like we will need to have a September 10th P&Z meeting, but it is shaping up like we will need a September 24th P&Z meeting, so I wanted you all to be able to plan accordingly. And that was it, Mr. Chairman.
Back on the agricultural facility exemption, I will say after our meeting, I did receive some comment exactly to that effect. And I personally kind of felt badly that we didn't explore that a little bit more. I know there were some comments on the commission by commissioners that, maybe that wasn't a bad idea. So I'm glad to see that idea has been picked up on, and the Board of County Commissioners will have a chance to either adopt that or not adopt it.
Right.
But at least it'll be in front of them. Okay, anything else to come before us tonight? Thank you all for coming, gentlemen and Madam Clerk.